We're gonna begin with 5-card draw. Everyone remember 5-card draw?
Oh, yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Who wants to start us out? Josh? Josh.
Yeah.
To the left. Deal to your left. Shane?
Hit me.
It's not blackjack.
Okay, let's do it.
Josh.
Left.
Left.
I got that.
Right.
All right, how many?
4. You don't want 4. You want to fold.
I want to fold.
What are you doing?
You're done.
Dealer.
Shane, you got 3 pairs.
Yeah.
You can't have 3 pairs. You can't have 6 cards in a 5-card game.
Fellas,
My
fellas.
cards that I was supposed to
All
Okay.
reds.
Yeah.
What up, dog?
All right.
I'm gonna love spending. Welcome back to Backyard Poker, everybody, the channel dedicated to expanding your poker palette beyond just Texas Hold'em. So as you can see here, the backyard is getting a little bit of an upgrade. It's a constant improvement here in the Backyard Studios. It's also nice that the camera is a little bit further away and I can be a little bit more relaxed. I was really getting intimidated by that
big eye staring me in the face.
Now it's nice to have it further away. This is part 4 of my Poker Basics series. This will be an in-depth explanation of the game 5-card draw, as well as a little poker history. Along with the basic game, I'll also show a few betting and rule variations to 5-card draw. This game of 5-card draw was first introduced in my last Poker Basics video on game structure and betting. I'm going to assume that you know the poker hand ranks and how dealing and betting is done. If not, check out parts 2 and 3 of this Poker Basics series. I'll leave the link in the description below. Way back in the olden days, even before Texas Hold'em, there was 5-card draw. But back in the early 1800s, 5-card draw only had 1 round of betting and used a smaller poker deck only going from 10 through ace. There was no straight or flush in the poker hand ranks and no exchange of cards. The game wasn't called 5-card draw back then. It was either the German version called Pachem or the French version called Poke. Pachem actually means to brag or bluff. But then in the 1820s, the 52-card deck was introduced and a second round of betting was added. Also, you were able to exchange cards and the straight and the flush were added to the poker hand ranks. 5-card draw was very popular during the Civil War, both North and South. The soldiers brought the game home after the war, and it soon spread to the Wild Wild West. If you watch any old Western movies showing poker, it's usually 5-card draw.
Poker?
Now let's head over to the virtual backyard and learn how to play 5-card draw. For the game 5-card draw, let's first look at what draw means. A draw game involves discarding cards and replacing them to possibly improve your hand. Drawing is optional. You could also stand pat.
What you talking about, Willis?
To stand pat simply means you're playing the cards as they are dealt and choosing not to draw any replacement cards. If you have a straight, flush, or full house, there is no reason to draw any cards. Is there a time when you stand pat when you should be drawing cards? Yeah, when you're trying to bluff the other players into thinking you have a good hand. There's usually a limit on the number of cards each person can draw. For most home games, the house rules will restrict the draw limit to 3 cards. Keep in mind that this may have to be adjusted if there are more than 6 players at the table. With 6 players, that means 30 cards will be dealt out to each player. That also means that up to 18 cards can be drawn, for a total of 48 possible cards. That would require the draw limit to be 3. With 7 players, you would have 35 cards dealt out, and up to 21 cards could be drawn. That would make the total 56. Since there's only 52 cards in the deck, this limit would need to be reduced to a 2-card limit. That way, with the 35 cards dealt out, only up to 14 cards can be drawn and still be under the limit of 52 cards. Draw games should not be played if there are 8 or more players at the table. If needed, you can split the players into 2 poker tables. Let's look at the 13 steps involved in playing a game of 5-card draw. These are the same steps from my previous Poker Basics video on game structure and betting. I suggest you watch that if you need some more info on how betting is done. This video will focus on the steps unique to 5-card draw. So step 1 is the dealer shuffling the poker card deck. Step 2 is the dealer and all other players putting in the ante. Step 3 is the dealer offering the cut to the player on the right. Step 4 is the dealer announcing the game 5-card draw. Step 5, the dealer deals out 5 cards to each player and himself. Remember that the cards are always dealt out one at a time in a clockwise direction. Step 6, the player to the left of the dealer opens the betting. Now let's talk a little bit about the betting strategy of 5-card draw. Usually someone will open for this and the second round of betting, since there are only 2 betting rounds. Other games with more betting rounds, like 5 and 7 card stud, may have more checking being done in the early rounds. 5 and 7 card stud games will be explained in the next 2 Poker Basic videos in this series. Betting is done until all players have checked, called, or folded. Step 8, each player now does a discard and draw of cards if desired. Let's take a look at draw strategy. It's usually pretty obvious what cards should be discarded, but sometimes there are a few options for what cards you'll want to discard. If you have 4 cards of any suit, like the example shown here with 4 hearts, you will want to discard the 1 offsuit card, which is this King of Clubs, even if it's paired up with another card, like this King of Hearts. You have a better chance of getting the flush and the needed suit card than the card value for your pair. Now let's look at a 4-card straight. You may have heard the expression before, never draw to an inside straight.
What you talking about, Willis?
An inside straight is when you have 4 cards of a straight and the 5th card is inside the 4 cards. So let's look at this example here. Of the 5 cards shown, 4 of them have the potential of a straight. 3, 4, 6, and 7. To get an actual straight, the jack must be discarded, and only a 5 could be drawn to complete the straight. The 5 is inside those 3 through 7 cards. Poker wisdom and the odds favor folding the hand. The only exception to folding this hand is if this jack was a 3, 4, 6, or 7. Then you could hold on to those 2 cards and attempt to get a 3 of a kind, full house, or 4 of a kind. Now the open-ended straight is a different story. That is when your 4 cards are all consecutive and you could complete the straight with 2 possible card values. In this example, the 4 cards, 5, 6, 7, and 8, are all consecutive, and either a 4 or a 9 will complete the straight. That is a hand worth keeping and trying for the straight. Don't attempt this when the cards are ace through 4 or jack through ace, for that will still only allow 1 card to complete the straight, and is just as bad as an inside straight. While you're discarding and drawing new cards, keep an eye out for how many cards the other players discard and draw, especially those that are standing pat. That may indicate the strength of their poker hand. So now let's have each player complete their discard and draw. This player here doesn't have much to work with, so we'll have him hang on to the king and the 8 and discard the rest. And he ends up with a pair of kings. Player 2 almost has the flush, so even though there's a pair of kings here, we'll discard that. And look at that, he gets the flush. Player 3 has that inside straight. He should have folded, but just for the fun of it, we'll see what he can get by discarding and drawing 3 new cards. Well, he ends up with a pair of jacks. Player 4 has the open-ended straight, so he will definitely discard this queen and try to see if he'll get a 4 or a 9. Unfortunately, he doesn't. Step 9 was the player to the left of the dealer opening the second round of betting. Since this player has a flush in hearts king high, and the house rules allow for a 50-cent open on the second round, this player will definitely open for 50 cents. The next player, who has a pair of jacks, may look at player 2 and think that his hand is better than these pair of jacks. So this player will fold. Player 4 was not able to complete the straight, looks at the 50-cent bet and thinks, too rich for me, and also will fold. And back to the dealer, player 1, who has a pair of kings, he thinks, let's give it a try and see if my pair of kings is high enough to win the hand. So player 1 calls the 50-cent bet. Since all non-folded players have the same bet amount and no one else has raised, that completes the second betting round and step 10. Step 11 is the showdown, where all the players reveal their hands. So player 2, with the flush in hearts king high, wins the pot. And that completes steps 11 and 12. And step 13, all the cards are gathered and passed to the next player on the left to start a new game. Now let's talk about some betting and drawing rule variations you may run into with a host's house rules. A more comprehensive list of house rules and poker etiquette will be discussed in part 10 of this Poker Basics series. One common betting variation is to open for the ante, close for double the ante. So on the first round of betting, only the ante amount, usually a quarter, can be used for opening and raising. On the second round, an opener or raiser can bet double the ante, so in this case, 50 cents. This is to account for the limited number of betting rounds compared to other poker games. A common addition to the draw cards limit is to allow anyone to draw 4 cards instead of 3 if they show an ace from their hand. That's because if all players drew 3 or 4 cards, there would be just enough cards to handle it. It's important to emphasize here that home dealer's choice poker, aka backyard poker, is a game with endless variety. You can take a familiar basic game like 5-card draw and tweak the rules and the gameplay to create a new game variant. You must make sure you explain these variations to the other players before dealing the cards. I'll be creating future videos on poker variants as a separate series on this channel. Let's look at a variation on the Guts style version of 5-card draw you already know.
What you talking about, Willis?
You may hear people say 5-card draw guts or 5-card draw guts to open. These both mean that any poker hand qualifies for someone to open a bet. That's what version I've been explaining in this video. There are, however, qualifier games, like Jacks or Better, that restrict whether someone can open a bet. A typical Jacks or Better game would require that someone has a pair of Jacks or better, like the 2 pairs shown in this example here, to open the betting. Otherwise, any player without a pair of Jacks or better would have to check or pass. If all players check and no one has Jacks or better, the cards are gathered back up by the dealer, everyone re-antes, and a fresh set of 5 cards are dealt out. This repeats until someone with a pair of Jacks or better opens. Once this happens, the game progresses normally after that. There are a lot of other possible variants to Jacks or better that will be explained in future videos. The next part in this series, Part 5, will explain how to play the game 5-card stud. This game introduces 2 new items to the game of poker: the use of up cards that everybody at the table will see, and a new way of betting based on those up cards. If you're getting good information from this Poker Basics series, be sure to like the video. And if you're really getting a lot out of this Poker Basics series, consider subscribing. I'd love to have you on board. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to know when new videos come on board. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.
16, 17, 22, 22. 27.
Any trouble, boy?
No, old man. Thought I was having trouble with my adding. It's all right now.